buckle up, because this deep dive is on Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. And, wow, just skimming this material is intense, to say the least. We're dealing with a whole other level of cruelty here.
Yeah, it's a tough one for sure. What I find so fascinating about Ramirez is how, like, his childhood, his personality, even the whole cultural vibe back then, it all kind of came together in this awful way.
Like a recipe for a monster, almost.
Yeah.
I'm seeing here his childhood was definitely not what you'd call normal.
No, not even close. Ramirez was born into this world of violence and instability. You can't ignore how much that affected him. His dad, Julian, was really abusive. Like, try to imagine growing up with that constant fear, you know?
To say it's awful.
Yeah.
You hope a kid could come out of that okay, but...
Yeah, and Ramirez didn't. But it wasn't just his dad. There's this other figure who casts a huge shadow, his cousin Miguel, or Mike.
See, even just reading about Mike gave me the chills. Something about him.
Yeah, and rightfully so. Mike was a Vietnam vet and not dealing with it well at all. He'd tell young Richard these graphic stories, like really messed up stuff, murders he said he'd done in the war.
Wait, so not only violence at home, but then this older cousin, someone he probably idolized, showing him this other side of brutality.
Exactly, and it went beyond just talk. Mike showed Richard gruesome photos, trying to make it normal, like some rite of passage.
So his idea of what's normal is totally warped from day one.
Completely. But there's this one event so traumatic you can't overstate it. When Richard was about 13, he saw Mike murder his own wife.
Oh, God. To see that young, I can't imagine.
And that's the thing, right? Not a fight, but murder. Someone he knew, probably trusted, that on top of everything else, it must have broken something in him.
His childhood was the breeding ground, basically. Awful to think about.
Yeah, it is. And as Ramirez got older, it all started to come out. Drugs, weed, LSD, petty theft, then burglary. All signs he's headed down a bad path.
Yeah, classic conduct disorder, right? But then there's this whole other thing, the Satanism, which, wow.
Things get even darker there. This wasn't just a phase for him. It became like his whole identity, a way to justify what he was doing, you know?
Like he needed to make sense of the chaos, and Satanism, with all the power and rebellion, was the answer, as messed up as that is. But did anyone try to help? Was he ever diagnosed with anything, like by a professional?
You're right, this wasn't just a kid getting in trouble anymore. This was serious. And honestly, it doesn't seem like anyone stepped in, or if they did, it didn't work.
Oh.
Later on, he was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, ASPD.
Okay, so how does that play into it, the ASPD? It feels like we're getting to the root of who Ramirez was.
ASPD, well, people get it wrong a lot. It's not just being a rebel, right? It's way deeper, this ingrained disregard for others. Lying, manipulating, acting without thinking, no remorse.
So with Ramirez, it's more than the crimes themselves. It's that he couldn't, like, understand how other people felt.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes it all so disturbing. Someone like that, especially with, like, sadistic tendencies, other people's pain, it's almost enjoyable. A way to control things.
This is where it gets really hard to stomach. You got to talk about the victims.
Yeah.
One thing with Ramirez, it's like anyone could be next.
Yeah, and that's what made him so terrifying, especially in Southern California. No pattern man, woman, young, old, didn't matter. Like some compulsion, no logic to it.
They're trying to understand a shark attack, you know? Just primal.
And the no pattern, it made the panic so much worse. Not just, am I next, but could it be my kid? Just constant fear.
And reading these accounts, he wasn't just robbing them or even a regular, killer. There's cruelty there, enjoying the pain. It's just not human.
It's the part that's hardest to grasp, even for, like, people who deal with this stuff all the time. The reports, the photos, it's sadism going way beyond what's needed, you know?
Which brings us to Maria Hernandez. Her story, man, terrifying, but also she's amazing.
Yeah, Maria's case, it shows how random Ramirez was. March 85, she's coming home, and bam, he's there, shoots her point blank.
Can't imagine, just out of nowhere, pure evil like that.
But here's the thing about Maria. She gets shot, bullet bounces off her keys somehow, and she fights back. Screams, gets attention, scares him off.
Do you think he, like, underestimated her? That she fought back, ruined his whole thing, so he ran?
Maybe, yeah. And thank God it worked. Shows that even in the darkest, scariest times, you can survive. But we gotta remember what she went through.
For sure. She lived, but that kind of thing, it never leaves you, you know? And that goes for so many of his victims, their families.
Absolutely. Behind the headlines, the stories, real people whose lives were shattered, families grieving, people with trauma. Those memories never fade.
It's not just a story for them. It's their life. And all this happening while this other crazy thing is going on, the satanic panic.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Not just Ramirez, but how it all fit into this big cultural freakout.
The satanic panic, I never quite got it. Can you, connect the dots to Ramirez?
So picture this, right? It's the 80s, heavy metal's big horror movies, people talking about the occult. It's like this breeding ground for fear. Like, what if there are satanic cults out there?
And then, bam, Ramirez hits the scene, talking about the devil leaving pentagrams behind. It's like he's confirming their worst fears.
Totally. It wasn't just that his crimes were awful, it's that they effete this narrative. Cops are freaking out, media's going nuts, parents are terrified, their kids are going to get sucked into some cult.
Fear's a virus, man.
Mm.
But what about Ramirez? Did he ever, feel bad? Was it more than just an act?
That's the thing. Even after they caught him during the trial's sentencing, he was defiant. Like, he enjoyed it, the attention, the fear, wanted to be this evil legend.
And he kind of got what he wanted, sadly. Even now, people still talk about him.
He's like a morbid celebrity. But speaking of catching him, it wasn't like the FBI or anything, right? It was just people, right?
Totally. This guy terrorized California, and then boom, some people in East LA, they recognize him from wanted posters, chase him down, hold him till the cops get there.
Wild, right? Shows you like community, the people coming together, can be anything. Doesn't fix what happened, but at least he didn't get away with it.
Oop. 1989, guilty on all counts. Murder, attempted murder, assault, burglary, sentenced to death, died on death row in 2013. Crazy to think that kind of evil, it's not always some monster in the dark. Sometimes it's right there.
Truth. Ramirez, he makes you think about, what people are capable of. We're fascinated by this stuff. True crime, but it's real lives, real pain. It's heavy.
It is. So I guess that's something to think about, right? What do we learn from this? Where's the line between being interested and, I don't know, enjoying this stuff too much? No easy answers, but good questions to ask. Until next time, everyone, stay curious, but stay safe out there.